After 15 years and 45,000 miles, the automatic transmission fluid in my DB9 looked like this. Let me show you how to do a full service so it comes out looking like this. In this episode of Aston1936.com, I'm going to do one of the most awaited videos I've ever been asked to do. Every couple of days I get somebody asking me to do this video. We're going to change the automatic transmission fluid in our DB9s. In another video I've covered what the actual service interval should be. It's been a bit of a debate. Aston Martin says filled for life. ZF, who makes the transmission, and their own service guide says every 50 to 75,000 miles or 8 years at the most. My 2005 DB9 has about 45,000 miles on it, and it's 15 years old, so it's a good 7 years past the due date. So I'm going to go ahead and change the fluid in my car. You don't really probably have to change the fluid in your car, I guess is Aston's point, if everything's working well. And in my car, there's nothing triggering this need to do the change other than I've discovered that ZF says the fluid should be changed more frequently. But I feel a bit of a not smooth downshift from fifth to fourth sometimes, where it bites a little bit hard. Normally it's a very buttery smooth, downshift as you go through the gears. But my fifth to fourth shift is a little bitey, so I'm wondering if that's going to change when I do the fluid switch. So we'll find that out. The procedure isn't trivial. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. The wrongish way to do it is just to pull the drain plug, let the fluid that flops out come out, fill it back up, and back onto the road. That's maybe how you do a traditional car. The right way to do it takes some actual serious procedures. We have to get the right parts, we need the exact right fluid, and we're going to have to take a bunch of things apart, change some gaskets, change some seals, but it's well worth doing. Now you only need to do this about every 8 years, so I think it's worth doing well. Now, I'm going to do this over a weekend so I can take the time to do the photography, but I think if you watch these videos and then tackle it yourself, you're really looking at only a morning in the driveway, so maybe about 4 hours start to finish to do the process. So I think it's well within the scope of any do-it-yourself mechanic. All right, with that said, let's get on with it. Parts-wise, we need a number of specialty items. This is not go down to the local parts store and you'll be able to pick them up probably type of thing, unless you live in England. We're going to need the right type of transmission fluid, you're going to need some seals, and we're going to need a new oil pan that includes the filter. So let me take you through a bit of a discussion. If you check your actual glove box owner's manual, it actually tells you right here about the fluids, and it says you need to get automatic transmission fluid Shell spec ATFM 1375.4, and you'll need 10.2 liters of it. So there is a ton of debate on the internet about whether you buy the Aston fluid, whether you buy the actual fluid from ZF, which is a Lifeguard 6 fluid, which is what this is, or you can buy other fluids from aftermarket makers that meet that Shell standard. So I've gone ahead though and got myself a dozen bottles, the official ZF Lifeguard 6 fluid here. The seals, we need a number of them. So inside the transmission, there's some rubber seals that wear out with age, and if you're going to take the time to get in there, this one's called a Mechatronics bridge seal. These are 3 different sizes of Mechatronics valve seals, and we're going to use one of the tall ones, one of the medium ones, and 2 of the short ones. And we're going to use this electronic sleeve. This is essentially where the wiring goes into the transmission, and these O-rings that seal it are notoriously known to leak. So while we're in there, we're going to change this electronic sleeve. And then we're going to change the oil and the filter. Well, ZF has built the filter right into the oil pan. So you can't reuse your old oil pan if you're thinking, oh yeah, I'll drop the fluid out and just reuse the pan. Nope, this unit right here is the filter. It's all integral with the plastic pan. Again, there's aftermarket companies that make all these seals. There's aftermarket companies that make these oil pans. This is a ZF pan. These are ZF seals. There's magnets that are built into the sump here to collect any of the metal bits that might wear out and get into the fluids, so it picks those up. There's a O-ring on the spigot here. This is where the filter connects into the pump. And of course, there's a new gasket built in that's integral to the oil pan. So basically, this is the filter, the gasket, and the pan, and the magnets all in one shot. And so we're going to need one of these. So just a little bit of discussion about whether or not to buy the Aston Martin labeled parts, the ZF labeled parts, or the aftermarket labeled parts. Up here, you'll probably find a link to my website where I list all the parts for changing the transmission fluid. What I found is that Aston Martin, of course, because they know they're selling a bespoke, a ZF's transmission for them, these are ZF parts. Aston hasn't made their own version of this seal. If you actually get up and look close on these, you'll actually see that this has the ZF brand on it. This has the ZF brand on it. If you buy the fluid from Aston Martin, they sell it for $62 a liter. So if you're going to buy 10 of these bottles from them, that's like $600 or more. In my article, you'll find links to the official ZF Lifeguard 6 fluid, where you can buy it for about $22 a bottle. And if you're into the aftermarket and you're willing to just say anything that meets that spec, that Shell spec, you can actually find Ford Mercon SP transmission fluid. It was made for the ones, the fluid that went into the transmission when it was in the Lincoln Navigator, or the some of the Jags, or some of the Land Rovers. Ford owned all those brands for a while, and you can get that for as little as $10 a liter. So if you bought all the parts, if you went down to your Aston Martin dealer, and I actually got all my seals and pan from Aston Martin, HWM in England worked with me to provide them, you might be $600. Again, check the article for the actual detailed prices. If you buy ZF original parts, and you go online and buy all these bits, it's just the ZF brands off the internet, you'll probably spend around $400. And if you decide you just want to go absolutely dirt cheap and buy all the aftermarket brands for the fluids, you know, the Ford fluid, the aftermarket seals for the BMW brand, and this pan, you could probably get it done for $200. But since we have to do this just every 8 years, and the transmission, if you screw it up, is worth maybe $6,000 for a used one, $20,000 probably for a new one installed, I don't think this is the area to scrimp and go with aftermarket parts. So for me, my recommendation would be get the original ZF parts, either from your dealer. Certainly get the parts maybe from the dealer, but I'd probably buy the fluid, since it's so much cheaper to buy the official ZF Lifeguard 6 fluid. And then you can either get the seals and the pan from the internet or from your dealership. And again, I'll have all the links to all the parts and fluids in the companion article that goes along with this video. Tools-wise for the project, you're going to need a number of hand tools and a couple of sort of specialty supplies. So let me take you through it so you can have everything you need when you get started. Most home shops are going to have most of this stuff, but let me take you through it. You're going to need some torque wrenches. So I have my 1/2 inch, my 3/8, and my 1/4 inch torque wrench. You're actually going to need a very low setting torque wrench to tighten up some of the smaller bolts. So I've got torque wrenches. I needed a breaker bar to get suspension subframe crossmember loosened up. I needed a couple of extensions, 1/2 and 3/8, to make my life a little easier. 3/8 inch ratchet. I needed a 22mm combination wrench to do the flare fittings. And then I needed a 10mm hex socket to do the drain plug. You could also use just a 10mm wrench, hex wrench. I needed a T40 Torx bit. That's really important for doing a bunch of the bolts. And then you need an 8mm hex, but it needs to be a stubby. It needs to be a sort of a short body. My 8mm that was full length wouldn't fit. So you may either want to cut down an 8mm wrench you already own, or buy a stubby, or buy one of these little stubby sockets, adapters. And I'll have links to this in the companion article, so you can get a nice short. I originally had thought I'll just get on there with an 8mm socket. No chance, because that's even longer. So anyways, you need a stubby 8. You need a few sockets. You need an 8mm 6-point. You need a 10mm 6-point. You need a 16mm 6-point. And I actually used a 16mm impact when I was trying to get the suspension crossmember off. You need a 10mm box end wrench, or you can make your life a lot easier if you get one of these ones that can do a bend and is also a ratchet. Getting one of the heat shields off is pretty tricky. Again, you could do it with a standard 10mm box end, but one of these bendy ones would be helpful. You need a small flat blade screwdriver to do a little bit of prying, a pair of decent pliers to pull down a seal. You're going to need some snippers or clippers to cut some tie wraps, not particularly special. Now, a few of the supplies I needed, I have a little selection of these rubber plugs, and when we're going to take off some transmission cooler lines, I found it was nice to be able to plug the line so it would stop dripping. So I had a pair of size 2 and a pair of size 00. You can get an assorted bag on Amazon for a few bucks, and there'll be a link in the companion article. You're going to make a mess. So you're going to need something to wipe up. This is pig mat. It's really absorbent. It's designed for oily fluid spills, and it just absorbs a ton of fluid if you spill some on the floor. So this would be a good idea to have some pig mat, or just a lot of paper towels handy. In the same vein, have some shop rags for your hands, because you're going to be getting gooey all the time and needing to wipe your hands. An inspection light is essential. You are not going to be able to do this job without a good inspection light. A few other supplies I needed some zip ties. So these are 8-inch, just sort of standard nylon zip ties. If you have some longer ones, it might be handy, but you'll see me use a few of these in the video. You're going to need some compressed air and a blowgun. And basically I use this to pressurize the transmission cooler lines. And I use some trusty electrical tape because I needed to fatten up the end of the blowgun, so I wrapped tape around it. So a roll of electrical tape might be handy to have. I had a small piece of 1x3 or 1x4. This is about, maybe 5 or 6 inches long. And I ended up needing this to be able to help get one of the electronics fittings back in to pry on it without breaking it. So a little piece of scrap wood would be handy. I have a piece of 1/2-inch ID tubing that's about 1 foot long, and I have a 3/8 OD 90-degree fitting and a hose clamp. I picked this up at the local hardware store. So this is a 3/8-inch ID by 1/4 inch MIP hose barb elbow. And basically, I stuck this into one of the transmission cooler lines, put compressed air in the other line, and fluid blows out of this into a bucket. Without this right angle and this hose, the fluid's going to blow back on you. So You might want to put together something like this. You could Rube Goldberg your own setup together. I have a small spray can of electronics connector cleaner. We're going to make up some electrical connections inside the transmission, and we're going to want to make sure we've got all the transmission fluid off of it when we make the connection. So this is a little can of CRC QD electronics cleaner. You can get this off Amazon or your local electronics or automotive store even. And you'll see me use my electric 3/8 inch ratchet a little bit because there's a lot of bolts that come off in a few steps. You use it for taking them off, not for putting them on. Another tool that you'll see me use is this transmission fluid fill pump. Basically, you pour the transmission fluid into here, pump the handle, and then fluid comes out of there. There's lots of different ways you can fill transmission fluid. I picked one that was easy, and there'll be a link to this tool in the companion blog article, so you can check that out. You're also going to need to be able to catch the oil that comes out of the car. So I'm going to shoot the video up on the hoist, so I'm going to be using my oil drain catch bucket thing there, but you're also going to see me using this. This is actually a dog kennel liner, and I bought this specifically for this project. You're going to have fluid dripping down. You're not going to be able to catch it all in a bucket or in a cloth. So I wanted a nice big drip pan to be underneath the car. So I got this off Amazon. It was a few bucks, and it was just basically to collect the drippings that I was missing. I also went down to the home center and I bought myself a measuring bucket that was, this one's 10 liters, 10 quarts, because I really wanted this measuring scale on the side, and it goes from 1 to 10 quarts, because you want to have a solid idea of how much you get out to know how well you're doing. So this was a couple of dollars at the local home center. You might not be wanting to wear your best clothes, Sunday clothes, to do this project. Let's get started on getting the project actually underway. So we have a couple of prerequisites to get out of the way first. Step one, get the car up off the ground on your jack stands as high as they will go. The reason you want it as high as it'll go, you're going to be underneath the car needing to do a lot of work. So take the time, get it up on the top peg of your jack stand, but you need to make sure the car is completely level, not sort of level, completely level, because as we do the fluid level check, the car has to be on an absolutely level surface. So take the time, get it up on jack stands as high as you can, get it completely leveled out. Once you get it up in the air, you need to take the under tray off the rear of the car. So in another video that I'll have linked up here, I've already shown you how you can take this off. All right, so I thought I'd take you on a tour around the transmission before we get started. Of course, the under tray is off already. So this is a frame cross member. It's held on with 4 bolts. We're going to end up pulling this out of the way. And then here's our plastic sump, and here's the drain plug for the plastic sump. And the plastic sump itself is held on with like 21 or 23 bolts. Our biggest challenge you're going to find is that the Aston Martin manual says, step 1, remove the right-hand exhaust pipe, because we need to get to the fill plug, which is on this side of the transmission, where you cannot get to right now. We also need to get to the parking park pawl disengagement lever. That's hidden up in here. And there's an electronics sleeve. So how the electronics connect to the transmission is up in here, and we have to disconnect the electronics sleeve. So we have a lot to do on this side of the transmission. I'm going to try to remove this heat shield that's here. If I was laying on my back on the garage floor and didn't want to remove the whole exhaust pipe, this would be what I'd try to remove. It's held on with 2 bolts. And so we're going to give that a whirl and see if we can get enough access. But you won't be able to see much of what I'm doing, so you may see me pulling off the whole exhaust pipe so that we can get better camera footage. we're going to be dealing with this valve. So basically on this side of the transmission, there is a pipe here. These are the pipes that go to the transmission fluid oil cooler at the front of the car, the little radiator. So to keep the fluid cooled, there's a pressure line. So that's the lower of these pipes coming off the side of the transmission. So it comes under pressure, goes through this thermostatic control valve, heads to the front, comes back cooled on this other line, goes through the thermostatic valve, back into the upper connection on the side of the transmission and dumps into the sump. So this is blocking access to the back bolts. We're going to want to get this out of the way anyways, and this will allow us to disconnect and drain the 2 liters of fluid that are in the transmission cooler. So that's what this valve is here on the side. And other than that, I think we're ready to get started. So with all the preparation work out of the way, we can get on with draining the fluid and removing the seals in part 2 of this series. Up here, you'll find a link to take you right to that video. Down here, you'll find the companion blog article where you can find all the information about the tools and parts that I've discussed in this portion of the video. If you like videos like this, please go ahead and subscribe. And as always, I love to hear your comments. Please leave those down below. Thanks for watching.